If you don't have someone that's looking at your business and what you want,
what's the most important role you need to hire?
Yeah, I think there's a couple different notes to touch on. Is
what I often find, and I think you've often found this as well, is
successful mountain climb doesn't happen when you hit the peak.
Let's describe a little bit of what failure looks like and how do we learn from it.
The worst thing that you could do is...
One of the interesting things has been the 7-year journey, 8-year journey that Rob Petrosino has been on. Maybe longer, maybe less. The word innovation pops to mind. We have pivoted through the era of e-commerce, the era of cloud computing, the era of co-innovation. We've been through a really big decline in the market when COVID first started, and then we saw this huge uptick in digital transformation. But this word innovation really stuck through every one of those journeys. When we go and work with our clients, we're seeing new opportunities for new products, new services, new lines of business. And oftentimes, if you're a 50-year-old company, you don't have the means to just pick up and pivot. You can't just leave behind a $700 million enterprise or a $1 billion enterprise to say, I'm going to innovate. And what I often find, and I think you've often found this as well, is you're tasking innovation to the wrong people sometimes. Sometimes it's the CIO is the innovator, and the CIO is really your cybersecurity guy, oftentimes. So I'd love for you to unpack kind of the pillars of innovation, especially when Rob Petrosino, Chief Innovation Officer, is brought in from the outside in to say, hey, look, I'm looking to create a new line of business. I'm looking to create a new product. What's the thought process? Where do you start in assessing whether the company is mature enough to innovate, and then building not only the team, but also what I love is the process of innovation, right? Because innovation, just like anything else, is a process. And how do you go about that?
Yeah, I think there's a couple different notes to touch on. Is when we think about organizations that want to innovate, or what that could look like, or bring a new product, new service, like you said, to a market, is traditionally there's a limitation of innovation because of a limitation of agileness, right? The ability to kind of move and shift. And not agile methodology, the one that we kind of leaned on is a level of nimbleness, right? An athlete who's nimble when they run, it's not because they know themselves really well, but they also know the reactions that the field's gonna have and the market's gonna have, right? And who's gonna do what. So this ability to control yourself as well as predict what's gonna happen is that nimbleness. And nimbleness in this case is pure innovation, right? Whether it's incremental innovation, radical innovation, we can talk about that for days. But that is one of the key characteristics I look for when working with a potential customer. It's like, do they have a willingness to move away from maybe the set methodology, the ideal approach, the limitations that they've kind of built for themselves in the organization, and move to being a little bit more nimble, being comfortable with failure, right? Understanding that there is going to be some level of traction that happens, and there's going to be also some level of slipping backwards, it almost feels like. And that's really the assessment that we come in and work with an organization to understand. They can have the best idea underneath the sun. They get the perfect market. They can have a perfect tech plan. They can even have the most perfect team. But if they're failing at that technique level of willing to be shifty and willing to be nimble, willing to be quick to fail, then a lot of those things don't really matter, unfortunately. So the pillars that we really focus on when it comes to innovation is, are they ready to fail fast, fail forward? Are they ready to be nimble? Are they open to new ideas, concepts, and technology that they may not have in their core set of their technology suite? And the last one, probably one of the most important ones, is, do they have the right people sitting around the table that can have the conversation about moving forward, right? We talk about techniques, teams, and tools all the time, right? So if they don't have that nimbleness as far as a technique, then even if they have the right people and the right tools, it may not be successful.
You're about to innovate. You're about to put $1 million into your idea. You're an enterprise. You want to get an outcome. What's the most important role you need to hire?
Agnostic external consultant. Agnostic because a lot of the consulting organizations that are out there, especially in this new age of innovative tech that's changing rapidly, if you don't have someone that's looking at your business and what you want with an independent lens on what's available in the market, you have a higher likelihood of failing. I think that you have to look at it from an objective point of view. And I don't think that a lot of people out there are doing that. I think they're going to sell you something backdoor.
Who is more successful in innovating, an external consultant or an innovative internal champion?
At PeakActivity, we want to work with both. You want someone who's external, like PeakActivity is, and has a pace and pressure and understanding of what the market impacts are, working in conjunction with someone that knows the business so well and wants to change it because they have a passion driver there.
What are the 3 traits inside of an organization to identify somebody who's really going to help innovate or who's going to be a detriment to innovation?
Oh yeah, we talk about this all the time. Is the project being held hostage by someone who's unaware of what's going on, right? Our job is to come in and say, is this person knowledgeable, right? Are they informed or are they ill-informed? Are they doing this for the right reasons, meaning are they being customer-centric? And are they willing to say that they're wrong? If someone is inside the organization and is like, I have every single answer, I know all the things that we're going to do, and I have a complete and utter grasp my 40-hour work week job, one of those things is a lie. And I would be keen to say that they don't know as much as they're putting on.
Most innovation projects fail because you give it to an internal person who doesn't have the expertise or the bandwidth, and they make poor decisions.
Yeah. Most executives are ill-informed or under-informed on who's running the project because they're hyper-fixated on results. That is not innovation. That is how we've always done technology projects.
So next question. Innovation, is it a journey or a destination?
It's a journey. If you do it the right way, it'll happen across every part of the organization. It'll happen to everyone within the organization. And there'll be a different culture shift that happens when you do it the right way. The worst thing that you could do is be innovative and not talk about it.
Is 2026 the year of tech transformation making a comeback? Digital and or machine learning, AI, other transformations?
Yeah, I think tech transformation is only going to maintain the rate of change that the most popular products maintain. So if we have technology in the market that continues hockey stick growth, you will have transformation that is required to keep up with that change because the expectation of the internal teams is to be working in an environment where they have the best tools to do their job.
Can Main Street companies, the small businesses and medium businesses in America in 2026 realize exponential benefit out of AI different from Facebook, Amazon, and Netflix?
Yeah, they can adopt the technology without all the pain that the biggest organizations are going through, right? We talk about failures all the time. Failures are good, regardless of what size of an organization you are. Those small to mid-sized businesses that are not in the S&P 200, 500,000 have the ability to adopt tech that's been validated by those groups.
If I'm a Microsoft Office customer, should I just use Microsoft for my AI solutioning?
I cannot express how much discontent I have with organizations just accepting the tools given to them because it's already existent in their technology stack, regardless of who the provider is. Doesn't matter if it's Microsoft, doesn't matter if it's OpenAI, doesn't matter if it's Google and Gemini, doesn't matter what the tool is. You don't have to just accept what's given to you because it's already existent in your ecosystem, and you shouldn't.
Should I put my CIO in charge of my innovation project?
It depends on who your CIO is. The mass amount of CIOs are in that role because they have 20, 30, 40 years of experience sometimes, and they may not be fully in touch with the rate of change that's happening now. But if you have a really strong CIO, they may be surrounded with people that do understand the rate of change and can help strategize the future. But that's a very slim amount of people, unfortunately.
If I can only make one bet on tech transformation in 2026, should I orient myself around sales efficiencies or operational efficiencies?
Operational efficiencies always. It's a more controllable environment. you can make mistakes internally that your external customers, end users will never forgive you for. Your internal employees are going to be a little bit more forgiving than your external ones.
Contrarian point of view, always bet on sales and sales growth. As the CEO, you always want to bet on arming your salespeople, and revenue fixes 90% of problems.
Revenue does fix 90% of problems, but are we talking workforce optimization where it's internal to external, or an experience that's directly geared towards external?
Maybe both.
Oh, fair. Okay. I can get behind it.
Custom build, go open source, or just buy off the shelf.
It's a pure risk tolerance. If you feel like you can run and maintain something internally that's open source, great. But do you have the right techniques related to that? Do you have the right teams to run that? And are you selecting the right tools when it comes to open source or spin your own versus purchasing what is a foundational new technology for the organization that you have less control over? So it comes down to risk tolerance, but it also comes down to what the piece of technology is and who's it's impacting. So there's a lot of factors that it's hard to just blanket statement, but I would say that you got to do a little bit of an assessment of both.
Lean business model canvas, yes or no?
100% yes. And you know what? To be honest with you, only 3 parts in the start: unique value prop, right? Customer segment, and the method to get from one to the other. If you have that, disregard most of the other portions of it till later in the process. If you have those 3, you're customer centric and you have unique value props that are going to be focused for that user. Those are the things that we talk about when being customer centric. So yeah, lean business canvas.
I would
critical.
challenge you a little bit. Oftentimes people don't know what their revenues and their costs are, and they get into trouble once they see the financials. But that's a different perspective from a CEO, maybe as the innovative guy.
Listen, I want to cultivate the idea. I want to cultivate as many ideas as I can, and then quell those ideas with those other sections. So if I have 20 that have 3 sections, they're more valuable than if I have 1 with all the sections filled out.
Next topic, minimum viable product, MVP, as you'll hear it called. Love it or hate it?
Love it when it's done the right way. So if it's done the right way and it's not just I built this to build this, right? That's when you get into trouble. But there is a minimum viable product when paired with those right attributes from the canvas that make value for that product to continue.
See, I would argue I hate MVPs. MVPs are the definition of I got to the top, but then I have no way down. There's too many people who get to the MVP, and I actually had a CEO tell me this the other day. He says, I hate acronyms. Why? Because if I knew it was minimum viable product, not most valuable player, I wouldn't have agreed to the MVP.
So here's the other idea that maximum impact, minimum effort.
Yes.
Right? So what's the maximum impact that we can make by building something with the minimal amount of effort? Because if I do it that way, right, which is a lot of what we tie to MVP, is I've built something with a low cost of effort that has a maximum impact on the core user. That's how you should be framing MVPs, but I agree with that CEO. I might start using that.
If I'm investing $100,000 in innovation next year, how much do I need to worry about maintenance and operating whatever I innovate?
I would budget for 30 to 50% of maintenance. And that 30 to 50% goes across infrastructure, teams, strategies, right, et cetera. You have to align to that. You can have an initial investment of a project, but you have to maintain and understand that you're going to need support after that.
How do you frame up if you're approached by a C-suite executive and you're approached by them to say, I have a great idea, or I know I need to innovate. I can't do things the same way I've done them for the last 5, 10, 15, 100 years. And they come to you and they go, what's the process for this? Expectations are often different in a big company for innovation than a small startup.
Yeah.
So how do you go about framing up and solidifying the idea? Because I think ideas are everywhere, especially at well-funded enterprises. And they think they have it all down to say, oh, if I just build this, it's going to be another $100 million business in our company. And it often never is, because you have to pivot and shift and adjust and get traction.
Yeah.
So tell us about the process that you'll go through with C-suite the end in mind, the outcome that they're looking for, and the experience to get there.
Yeah. So number one always is who's the customer, right? Who's going to be using it? And we always use the word customer because the customer could be someone internal, right? And the goal and method and approach there is to be more efficient, right? Workforce efficiency, optimization of the workforce internally. Or it could be external to the organization, right? And that customer could be a business. It could be a direct consumer. It could be whomever. So understanding who that is probably layer one of that process, right? From there, if you keep that user, that customer in mind throughout every one of these following steps, it makes life 100 times easier. Often, we come in and they go, well, I just need to build this thing because this thing is going to fix it. And that thing that they want has no reference to their target audience, the end user, the customer that they're talking about. All right, so we get customer first. Great, we're customer centric. We're thinking about that. Then we move into what's unique about this? Why is it impacting the customer? What's kind of the method and approach there? Why is it really important to them? From there, we can then start solutioning. And that solution could be a slew of different things, right? It could be a widget, it could be a web page, it could be an internal tool, it could be an external tool. It doesn't really matter what the solution is if we keep that customer at heart. And before we ever build a thing, I think the biggest thing that we've been leaning on is this, very much the same what you said, is this press release, the future press release. What would success look like in a press release for this tool? Okay, well, we want to talk about having 100,000 users on this platform. Great, that's awesome. If that's the press release goal that we're targeting, then the customer who's using the product has to be enabled to get there, right? That press release and that future projection will ultimately solidify alignment from the people that you want around the table and pull the people that are not really interested in it into the direction that you should be moving. So that press release, that future focused press release, is really important to build out. And I think the accompanying to that is an FAQ, right? So if I have this press release and then I have a for any questions that a customer may ask while using this tool, I now have solidified this vision completely. I know what success looks like, and I know what the features, tools, functions that the person or the user, that customer is going to engage with within that product.
Most C-suite executives that are looking at innovation don't understand failure. You've experienced over your last 7 years a lot of innovation projects that have gone sideways or been killed. Yeah. Let's describe a little bit of what failure looks like and how do we learn from it. The 3 or 4 major failures I've had in my life have led to astronomical growth, exponential growth. If you're someone who's listening thinking, I want to be known as an innovator, I need to be known as an innovator, how do you learn from failure?
I think there's 2 specific types of failures, right? There is a tech failure, and then there is a people failure. I think those are the 2 ones that we can throw any project that we've had break into one of those. What I'll say on the tech failure side is being too early, right? Pushing the bleeding edge to cutting ourselves almost, where we were adopting technology that maybe was a little bit too far down the road and pushing it to what we wanted beyond its capability at that time. I think that we've failed in that area. So what does that mean? What's the learning there? Okay, if we're going to adapt technology, regardless of what the technology is, how much support does it have in the market? Is it trending northward? Does it have exponential growth or does it just have incremental growth? What's the support metrics around it, right? Whether it's SDKs or integrations, et cetera. So I think that there's that side of it for sure. And that's a good way of identifying and making sure you're doing a little bit of tech validation on something that's brand new. On the other side, the people side is really crystallized what we were talking about before, where is the vision the same? Is the experience the same? Is this the journey that you want to bring the customer on? If you can align on those things, making sure that those messages transcend stakeholders is so critical. And I think that that has been a failure of ours, where we were in a very good spot with a set of stakeholders implementing a piece of technology and everyone was aligned to the vision, but we failed to communicate it to a different stakeholder. or a different stakeholder that came in. So what are you guys doing over here? And I think that now that we have these two kind of approaches to looking at new and emergent tech and having a good way to validate it, and looking at the focus, vision, and goal that we're driving to with that press release and the FAQ, we can now communicate and evaluate in a different way than we were 7-8 years ago, for sure.
If you're an enterprise today and there are new tools, capabilities, machine learning, large language models, and you're looking to leapfrog your competition, there's the people side of failure and there's the tech side of failure. The technology is shifting very, very quickly. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it feels like most enterprises are still doing business the same way they've always done. So Rob Petrosino is going in to talk to a Fortune 500 executive. What's that conversation like around the people part of innovation, or the emotional and human nature part of it, where organizations have politics and they have different wills in different organizations? How do you address that? And then give us some tools or some capabilities that every organization should have to flex that muscle.
Yeah. The simple one here is innovation has to be bi-directional. It not only has to be top down, but it has to be bottom up. Okay. So a really easy question is walking into an organization. Hey, we want to do this fantastic thing. Awesome. Great. Why do you want to do it? Who wants to do it? Do you want to do it? Or do the people that report to you need this and have been advocating for it, and now you're listening to them? That's a big question to ask an executive. The other one is, what have you done before that's similar on the adoption path? You were either early, you were on time in the adoption. Did that happen? Oh, well, no, we've never adopted it. This is going to be radical for us. Okay.
Red flag.
That's a very different mindset, right? That's a very big red flag.
Yeah.
Because they don't know the journey that they're going on, right? We talk about climbing, we talk about moving and assessing and advancing on a journey forward. If they're advancing without any frame of reference on the assessment that they've had in the past, right? You're never going to hit the peak that you wanted to hit, right? You're going to fall into a valley, you're going to fall into a crevice, but you have to do that assessment along the way.
I really would love to expand on, many people think you build it once and it's done. You don't climb to the top of the mountain, hit the peak, and then you're done. Yeah. And I like to use the example of a Facebook or an Instagram. When both those tools launched, they didn't have all the bells and whistles. They didn't print money like they do today. They incrementally got there. And most innovation projects hit what I would call a plateau, and the will to desire it up to the peak is often missing, because if you're a $1 billion company and you've achieved $10 million in sales in your new product or service, fantastic. It's an annoyance. And I saw this firsthand. When I was with a large retailer, we had extra data center capacity and we had business customers. And we could have created a cloud computing giant, but instead we ended up remodeling stores and bathrooms. And the reason was that wasn't our core business. So how do you convince somebody to say, Rob Petrosino, outside consultant, innovation extraordinaire, knows what he's doing really well, has brought probably billions of dollars of products to market and been successful, but has also experienced those failures, and those failures are where organizations learn. How do you go in and teach the part to an executive who's used to being a striver, who's used to just, oh yeah, we grew 35%. We've been growing 35% for 10 years in a row. Oh, but you know what? This product and service is going to change the game, but it's not going to be until year 10. How do you teach them that?
Yeah, I think a really useful, analogy here is the successful mountain climb doesn't happen when you hit the peak, right? You take the cute photo of the 14er at the top of the mountain, but the climb isn't over. You have to get back down, right?
And more people get injured on the way down than they do on the way up.
Always. Because you are so aspirational, so inspirational, so motivated to get to the peak, and you're so excited about the photo at the top that most people tire themselves out or go a little bit too far or lean a little bit too much on what they've done in the past to get there. And then the descent is really, really hard. And the descent in this case doesn't have to be going back where you were, but handing off this innovation to the internal team to run, manage, and focus on, right? So I think a big part.
Let me unpack that though.
Yeah.
How many times have you transitioned a project to an internal team only to watch it go into stasis and decay?
Absolutely.
How many companies do you advise not to necessarily just try to get your internal team, but instead try to build a new department? What's the best practice?
Yeah, so that's 100% the right way of looking at it. Is if you've never handed it off, you've never done the descent so you can approach the next peak, right? If you've never done that handoff portion of it, if you hand it off to a group that has never taken one of these things in and cultivated it and refined it and made it better and continued it on its course, it has a likelihood of failing. A high likelihood.
And the fail is on the descent. You hit the peak.
Exactly.
And then you hand it over to an internal team saying, I don't need to spend as much money on this anymore.
Yep.
When in reality, look at what Instagram did. They doubled down. They tripled down. Right. And that double or triple down is really critical.
Yeah, that's the big part is that handoff. When that handoff happens, that PR, FAQ, etc., that goes with this so that those teams can understand and continue to move it forward.
What does Rob Petrosino's world look like 5 years from now?
I'm hoping in 5 years there is a synthetic version of me that's on 24/7, 365 that anyone can validate an idea with, and that it is meaningful and impactful and changing the way people understand what innovation is and how easy innovation can be if you have the right mindset and approach to it.
You've traveled the world. You're part of the FBI's external consultancies. What's the best pizza you've ever had and where?
I hate to say it, but there's only one pizza place that I will go to from now into infinity, and it's in New York. It's on the Lower East Side. It's called Scar's Pizza. It's better than New Haven. I think the pizza wars that have been created are at the detriment of people moving into making the pizza space because it feels now unachievable for most people. I have other recommendations, but I think that's the best pizza around.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rob.